Hi guys, welcome back to Steve Cal Clash Fitness. Today's episode 2 of the running tips for beginners, okay? And actually I feel that this one isn't just for beginners. What we're covering today is a checklist, an in-run checklist of things that are going to help your technique, help you go further and help you go faster, okay? So this is something that I used to use all the time when I was drilling technique into me. Okay, I'd be running, and then all of a sudden I'd sort of slip into the old technique, the old sort of routine, the bad habits, and I'd run through the checklist, and bish bash bosh, I'd be fucking running fast and further again. Okay, so I'll go through 5 things. The first 3 are the most important, and then you can add on the second 2 as and when you feel comfortable with the first 3. So for me, the first one is straight back. It sounds really simple, but if you've got a nice straight upright back, what that's going to do is open up your lungs, and it's going to allow you to supply more oxygen and give yourself easier breathing. Okay, so the first thing to remember is straight back. The easiest thing to do when you're new to running is sort of hunch over. If you're climbing up a high hill, a steep hill, you start to feel out of breath. You'll start to sort of run like this, and you'll see a lot of runners that are sort of running hunched over. And obviously, what that's doing is restricting your diaphragm. It's restricting your breathing. It's very difficult to breathe when you're hunched over like that. So the first thing to run over in your mind is having a straight back. So shoulder blades back, not uncomfortably so, but straight spine. You know, give it a good click. Shoulder blades back. And just be able to feel, you know, all that air being able to fill your lungs. It's a liberating experience, and you'll actually find yourself once you're in that rhythm and you start to hunch over. You'll ask myself, is my back straight? And you'll straighten up, and you'll immediately feel better. Your breathing will feel better. So tip number 1, straight back. Tip number 2 is, are your knees driving forward? Are they bent? And are they driving up and slightly forward? So what I mean by that is, now we've checked, we've got our straight back. Now what are your knees doing? Are they sort of landing out in front of you straight? Or are your knees bent? Your foot is obviously, if your knee's bent, your foot is behind your knee. Are your knees driving you forward? Okay, or is it your foot going out in front of you that's driving you forward? So your knees should be the things driving you forward, ideally with a slight upward lift. Okay, so you straighten your back, you look down, and the second thing to check is, are my knees driving me forward? Yes or no. If your knees aren't the things that are driving you forward, and if they're not bent, then you need to just rein that in and make sure that your knees are the things that are propelling you forward there. Okay. Tip number 3, are my heels flicking backwards or not? Okay, so I'm straight back, my knees are the things that are driving me forward. Now my heels need to be pushing backwards. So are my heels flicking back with every single stride that I take? Okay, so I want short, choppy strides, and it needs to be my heels that are flicking back with every single stride. Okay, so that's the basic technique checklist. So when you're out running, you know, start off by running through those 3 things. When you sort of feel you're getting into rhythm or getting a little bit tired, every mile or every half mile or kilometre or whatever you measure your distance by, just run those 3 things by you. Is my back straight? Make sure you straighten it up. Are my knees bent and driving me forward? And are my heels flicking back behind me? Okay, so just nice flick. Doesn't mean don't tense your calf muscles or anything like that, just a nice flick of the heel backwards. Okay, those 3 things you will, after doing that checklist whilst running, those 3 things will massively improve your run. Okay, not just for new runners. I know plenty of runners that have been running for a long time and they've never focused on technique. You know, you'll see them hunched over, you'll see them driving forward with their heels. They'll have no backwards propulsion whatsoever. So those 3 techniques, you know, without delving too much into technique, those 3 things off the checklist will really help. Now, if you're focusing on those 3 things, point number 4 should come quite easily, but point number 4 is that your feet should land under or slightly behind, but preferably directly under your centre of mass. So if you think you're checking that your knees are the things driving you forward, even so it's still possible for your foot to land in front of your centre of mass. So your knee needs to drive you forward, but your foot needs to actually land directly under your centre of mass. What that's going to do is allow gravity to push you forward rather than having to drag yourself forward, and then when you land underneath your centre of mass you're able to more easily flick your heel back. Okay, so number 4 on the checklist is feet landing underneath your centre of mass. And number 5 is what your arms doing. Are your arms like all over the place like this? Are your arms sort of down by your side or underneath your hips? That's not good. Arms, one of the most important things about running. So they do two jobs in my mind. The first thing they do is obviously propel you forward if you're using them correctly. And the second thing they do is help you set a decent rhythm, a decent foot strike. So ideally you'll be hitting 100 and 180 strikes per minute. So being able to have a nice fast arm turnover is going to help you with that. So number 5 on the checklist is have a look at what your arms are doing. And ideally when you're first learning you'll just exaggerate that. So your arms should be around a 90-degree angle but relaxed. Make sure they're relaxed. Again, no tensing like this like you're doing the robot. You want a nice relaxed arm strike, and just bring them right up to your face. Exaggerate it. For the first couple of times when you're learning this, exaggerate it, bring it right up to your chin, bringing your arms back a little bit, not too much. You're not trying to elbow the person behind you or anything like that. You just want a nice relaxed arm strike, driving forward and ensuring that high turnover, that quick turnover, leg turnover there. So just make sure your arms are doing the work to propel you forward and make sure that your legs are turning over at the correct speed. Okay, so that's the five main tips for improving your running technique immediately. Okay, that's going to help with your speed, it's going to help with your distance. So when you're running, run through your checklist. Is my back straight? Are my knees bent and driving forward? Are my heels flicking backwards? Are my feet landing underneath my centre of mass? And are my arms driving forward? Okay, so you can write those on your hand if you're having trouble remembering them. If you're wearing a cap you could write them on the top, or you could just do it the old-fashioned way and memorise them. But drill that mentality into you, drill that checklist into you. Start your run by running through the checklist. Run through the checklist every mile or every kilometre or every half mile, constantly remembering that checklist and just, you know, refining those techniques, noticing which ones maybe you're not quite so good at and working on those. The results will be immediate and you'll feel fantastic. Okay, so use these in conjunction with what you learnt last week from my video, and let me know how you're getting on. Let me know if you've got any questions. Leave those down below, subscribe down below, you know how it goes. Let's keep it rolling.